It's something that I think we was just out of pocket of one GS. So really Tuesday, but it's actually so I think that's accepted. So we got when the board is one place.
It always happens that you know that. Okay.
And I'll ask you board to set it. We got the and if I was over, like I said, I think I got your second.
Thanks, Harry. Morning, everyone. I apologize for the delay. We're going to go ahead and get started. Glad everybody made it here safely. I'm going to go ahead and get started. But you're so straight. All right, I'll ask Harmony, please take a roll call, if you will. Director Bradley. Director Brown.
Thanks for waiting. I'll try.
Director Cardenas.
Getting online here.
Director Dowling.
Here.
Director Keithley.
Here.
Director Whitback. Here. Director Olson.
Here.
Director Peterson.
Here.
Director Prokopis.
Here.
Director Silvestrini.
Here.
Director Stevenson.
Here.
Thank you, Harmony. I'm impressed with our quorum this morning. I was a little worried we all might be delayed, and I apologize for my tardiness. It's a little rough getting out here from downtown Salt Lake. We'll go ahead and get started. Is there any public comment today?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
I just wanted to take a quick moment to recognize Harry. He, along with the Greek Orthodox Church, gave $1,000 to our Hillcrest High School for their school community pantry just a few days ago. It's a great program that exists out of our schools in Midvale, and these pantries really do a lot of good to serve these communities. So I just wanted to make sure I thanked Harry and helping to support our community. So thank you.
It was enjoyable.
I should also jump in and say that they did the same for Olympus's food pantry and high school. So thank you to your parish for us as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I just want to say this, the fact that you have been supporting these brought it to our attention. So thank you for that. And it was enjoyable and brings kind of a tear to your eye to see that there are a lot of kids that need this help. And I think it's incredibly valuable to know that. In fact, I'm hoping to bring a check to Courageous Food Pantry as well. I've got one more allotment I can give, and I understand there's one in Mill Creek. We're going to be paying attention to these school pantries going forward because what they do is amazing. And the impact is direct. So I also want to thank the cities who, had you not been involved with UPD and trying to raise funds for these organizations, we wouldn't have even known about it. But what goes on in these local food pantries is amazing. We hope that we can continue our support. It's from our Greek Festival that is supported by the community and it's part of our give back. But yeah, thank you for bringing it to our attention. I'm finding out a lot more about what goes on, and we intend on supporting it going forward as well.
You know, I should say too, sorry to drag this out now that you've said that. We threw together a 10-day contest and holiday for Cockfoot and Olympus to split the donations between UPD, UFA, and the city employees. And UPD killed everybody. And we've got some photos. I don't know if you passed along, Chief, maybe you did to the PIO. But they had a whole room full plus, I think, $3,000 in donations, but we raised about, I think the equivalent of about $7,000 over 10 days, but UPD was probably about 65% of that. So the Chief Hoyle, Lieutenant Ackerman and their crew, it was phenomenal. And they were just blown away when they came over to pick up all the food between the two campers. So thanks, Chief.
Amazing.
I'm gonna drag out a little bit more too. Because to, Chief Thomas in Midvale, he's already got a big enough ego. I try not to explain. We did a competition between UFA and Midvale, that are precinct in the city, to bring in food for the Utah Food Bank. We brought in almost 1,000 pounds of food, and the precinct was about half of it. So really, UPD really stepped up to help collect some food for the food bank this winter. So thank you, Chief.
I'll make a side wager that what we collected.
Oh my God.
Madam Chair, on maybe a more somber, serious note, not somber, I guess, because all good outcomes, but I want to recognize the search and rescue team and Canyon Patrol for the work that they've done to they had a rescue in Nest Canyon, just on the edge of Mill Creek, last day or so, and good outcome. Somebody with broken femur was, got off the mountain there because of the good efforts of our folks, and just kind of hope that everybody remembers, especially with the significant volume of snow that we've had in the last few days, that avalanche danger is crazy out there, and even in places where you think may not normally be a problem, they could be. So so be careful out there when you go in backcountry.
It's an important reminder. Thank you, Mayor Silverstream. Thanks to the team. Saw that on the news yesterday.
Maybe don't go in the backcountry now.
Maybe don't. We do support our resorts. All right, any other public comment today? It's nice to start with some uplifting information and some great community support. I'll remind everyone, those needs are here year-round. As someone who works on homelessness services and other services related to those disadvantaged communities, the support that we see this time of year is incredibly stellar and amazing. But please, during the course of the year, remember that these communities and these individuals need our support all the time, but it takes a village for us to support everyone in our community. And I just want to express my appreciation to everyone who does these really fun drives and competitions and things, because in the end, it ultimately benefits our citizens. So thank you all for everything you do. Let's move on to our update with Sheriff Rivera. Item number 3.
Well, since some of the thunder was taken by the board, I'm going to still comment. First on my list is search and rescue. They have been extremely busy, and we did have a recovery of someone also this week. So fortunately, last night was a good outcome. At least they were able to get him off the mountain. And if you guys probably don't get to know a lot of what goes on with them, except what's on the news, but it's really takes a toll when they have to go up and recover someone, because they receive a call, somebody's lost in the mountains, and trapped or can't get down, and they go up, and sometimes they can't, it's not safe for them to go and get them, and overnight the individual task. So kudos to our staff. And yesterday, this individual, the same thing happened. It took hours and hours, and they kept updating of what was occurring. And I'll tell you, they tried everything possible to get these folks off the mountain safely. And it was a real close call yesterday in Mill Creek. This individual is still in critical condition because it took all day for their efforts. I had the opportunity to go to their Christmas party that they had at Special Ops, and we just went and thanked them for what they do. But I'm telling you, they're all volunteers, and they have all different kinds of professions and careers. It just amazes me the amazing people they are. So. And then next on mine was I was going to thank Harry for his efforts. If you haven't been to the Greek Festival, it's an amazing event. And I've had the opportunity to go help out once in a while, but I'll tell you, Harry does a great job outside of this job to help raise money. And he offered that to us this year, and it was just great. And I'll tell you, Harry has such a great heart. But he's very emotional, so sometimes he gets us emotional about what once a week, Harry. So, you know, it's great to see a different side. He's not just our attorney, but he's a wonderful man.
Maybe we need a new lawyer then.
Have you seen the other side of Harry? I would say don't mess with Harry. And then we also did our shopping with Shield, and I want to thank our, pretty much everybody that kicked in, but our communications unit put it all together. We were able to help multiple families and a lot of, sad stories of tragedy that we were able to give joy to these kids. And, we find the families through the officers that go out on these calls, and sometimes a parent may have been murdered, or they, just tragic things, parents die, car crashes, things like that. And these kids get to just take a day and go out to Walmart and meet all of us, engage with us, and then get to pick what they want. And it's amazing. They always pick for their siblings before they pick for themselves. So amazing kids that we met this year. And it's a great event. So we're really proud of that as well. And that is our program that we allow the officers to grow a beard, and our female officers can paint their nails and color their hair. And it's just a great program because they actually donate all the money. So kudos to our department for that. Now I'm going to switch a little bit. So our command post, I mentioned that in our finance committee meeting. It is on its last legs. I'm just letting you know that it's out there. To replace it 18 months ago, it was about $500,000. We still have it running, but the parts are no longer available. So I just want you to know that it's there. We're going to try to find funding, but we don't know what the future of our command post will be. It's critical to have one, especially if something were to occur today, like a day like this where it's cold. We have to have a place to be. So we'll keep you updated. We'll take a look at some other options for funding, and then we'll bring it back to you. See, and then we did receive a rebate from PEHP. But you recall we usually do every year. It's around $97,000. We will make some recommendations what we would like to do with that. Last year we gave employees some of that money back. Right now we're in a critical situation with our crossing guards. So our crossing guard coordinator is leaving at the end of the year. And Chief Dial has spoken with him, and that job is extremely challenging to coordinate. You have to coordinate with all the schools and all the crossing guards. And Chief Dial, do you know how many crossing guards we have? I don't recall. I think it was 130 or something. Chief Dial.
We have about 147 full-time crossing guards and about 30 to 40, depending on the day or the week, as far as substitutes. But it's becoming more and more challenging with the economy to find people. The school districts are picking them up, providing part-time employment at better pay with benefits. So anyway, it's just a challenge.
Okay. So that's the situation we are with the crossing guards. So I'm putting together a proposal to possibly use that money to keep the ones that are willing to stay on. So, but we'll bring it back to you in January. And hopefully we can keep them on long enough. But it's a challenge. Hiring is just a big challenge, but to have one coordinator putting all those people every single day. And then when school gets canceled or a school changes their mind or it's just a huge challenge. Putting that on your radar. And then the audit, we kept Lisa Dudley on because we were transitioning CFOs. And she has worked with Rick on the audit. The audit will be ready by Tuesday. However, we have to have it presented to the board. So we're going to have to schedule another meeting with the board. And we were trying to figure out when that would be good for you. We can have Harmony send out some dates, but it has to be done by December 27th. So is there a particular date that, and you don't have to be here in person, we can do it all online. We'll just get the auditor to come in, present the findings, and then that will take care of the requirement that were required by law. We did hear back from the auditor that there's nothing of concern in the audit. So if we can at least get just a majority able to attend a meeting, and we'll schedule the auditor to do the presentation. So is there a particular date that might work for an interview, or I can have Harmony try to schedule it? Google, I don't know, what do you use? Google? Oh, Doodle. See what I want to schedule?
Sheriff, Lisa estimates it'll be a very, very short meeting.
Yeah.
So Sheriff, if I could ask, I've been trying to research this. I don't think this requires a 7 or 10 day notice. It looks like, is that correct, Amanda? You looked at it?
I'm searching right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to jump in here too. I also don't think this requires that the length of noticing that's required for budgets. Just the meeting notice of the 24 hours.
So I've been looking while we've been talking. I can't find anything requiring more than just the standard notice for a meeting. So I'd originally told you I thought it had to be between Christmas and New Year's. I don't think it does. So at this point, I think if we were to set this for Wednesday or Thursday of next week, probably Thursday would be best because we're being told it'll be ready Tuesday. It might be best just to set it now if there's a time that we can get a majority of the board together to check, and then we would set this for a time on Thursday that works, and then we can get that noticed out.
Any suggestions from the board?
Unless the board wants to schedule this between Christmas and New Year's, which is fine too.
How about December 26th?
Well, I know we're all off that day, so the other commitments.
All right, so it'll be ready by Tuesday, the 20th.
The 20th.
So what about Thursday?
Thursday, the 22nd.
22nd.
We just need to time that.
Yeah, I'm out of town, but I can tune in on a Zoom call.
I'm in the same boat.
Does the 22nd work?
Yeah, we'll do it via Zoom, so you could just be on real quick.
I think it's okay.
What time? 9 o'clock?
Well, if you're both out of town,
Yeah, but I can call in.
does it depend what time your time changes?
I'm in the same time zone.
Okay.
And I would prefer it to be in the morning. So, 9 o'clock on
20th, 9.
No,
22nd.
22nd at 9.
Thursday, the 22nd. Those of you online, Carolyn, does that work for you? Steve?
That works for me.
Carolyn's muted, but she is talking.
Yes, 9 a.m. Yeah, online.
All right. Okay, we'll set it for that time. If there's any hiccups, let us know.
We'll get it noticed.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you, Sheriff. Any other updates?
I know.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 4, our finance committee updates. Carolyn.
There we go. Okay, so two of the things that I was going to mention have already been mentioned by the sheriff. So I'll just go to the item that we're going to be discussing right after I present, which is the sixth item. It's the fiscal year 2022 quarterly budget amendments. The committee heard and had a discussion on this, and we voted to bring this to you to approve based after your discussions. So then the other thing that we did discuss was Lisa let us know about the process that will be required since we, with the new interlocal on the timeline for the budgets, that's going to require, and the financial committee agreed to meet 2 extra meetings. So instead of 4 quarterly meetings for the financial committee, we'll be meeting 6 meetings. And I don't know whether any of you need to know those dates. The financial committee received them via email. So that's pretty much all we did, which was quite a bit on everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Keegley. Appreciate the update. Let's move forward to agenda item number 5, acceptance of donations. Chief.
Thanks, Madam Chair. A couple of quick donations. Current Community Council Paul Larson, a donation of $700 cash for Supper for Santa. We really appreciate it. And the second one's from the Kearns Township, also for a Supper for Santa for $1,000. Thanks, Kurt.
I'll entertain a motion for acceptance, please.
I was gonna make that motion.
Yeah, I'll move to accept.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mayor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, thank you. With gratitude, we appreciate the donations very much. All right, let's move on to our quarterly budget adjustments. I think our new fiscal manager made it. I heard you were coming in from Ogden.
From North Ogden.
North Ogden.
Yes, 2.5 hour drive
Oh, my goodness.
this morning.
I noticed that Ogden School District did a 2-hour delay, so I'm sorry that you had to do that, but welcome.
Thank you, Chair, Board. As Carolyn mentioned, the quarterly adjustments were presented to the Finance Committee on Monday and they were approved. Lisa was the one that prepared these. She's been invaluable to me since I started, and so has Rick. So I had Rick come up with me today just to make sure that I don't misunderstand what was presented. So starting with, I hope you got your sheets with you. And I'll try and talk you through these. The first item is the transfer from other funds from Mill Creek. And this will be going for 2 officers for the temporary homeless shelter in Mill Creek for $15,400. And this correlates with, if you look right below that, you'll see the general fund expenditures. So that $15,400 ties into the $1,400 and also $4,000 and for the computer components and for the video for $10,000. So that's where you get your 15,400 there. The other is the restricted contributions. That's for $19,376, and that's going to go towards 2 canine ballistic vests and the DJI Matrix drone. If you go below under the general fund expenditures, you'll see that that ties to the 2,635 for the small equipment account, and then 16,741 for the drone. So those were those. That's where those tied together. The 2,850 is just a reclass of moving expenditures from one account to the other. So those are the quarterly adjustments for general fund. If you'll look on the second page, on the last one for the Mill Creek precinct, that's also addressed there. So it's not like we're double posting, but we're taking that, we're showing those expenditures in Mill Creek and it's being transferred into the general fund, and that's why we've got to show both funds in there for your adjustments. And you're probably very familiar with this, I'm sure. This is to you. For the current precinct, we've got, Lisa that's going to be contributing for, promoting one officer to a sergeant for 16,000. And if you go to the expenditures below, that ties to the 11,000 for the increase, 1,700 for, no, I'm sorry, 11,000 for the increase. And then over under employee benefits on the side to your right there, you'll see $5,000. Portion of that 8,778, 5,000 which goes to, which ties to that 16,000. Then we're also taking restricted contributions for 41,687. That is for new vehicle for sub persona. And those tie down to under expenditures 1,700 under community events, and then 39,987 to transfer for the fleet in the fleet account. Then we're also going to be using funds, restricted funds for 51,560. This is the use of the alcohol tax.
Was there bear tax money that was left over from last year? We're just moving it into this budget.
We're going to be using it now so that it will be for overtime, 37,782 for overtime, 10,000 for software, and then 3,778 over on the right hand side for related employee benefits. And that covers the quarterly adjustments for the current precinct. Then if you go to the second page under the Magna precinct, now these highlighted ones are ones that need to be approved by the visa after the meeting. That's why they're highlighted. So we're just presenting them to you. We are going to be using 16,000 again to promote one officer to a sergeant, and that, and then if you go to the highlighted below, you'll see that that's for the salaries and also for the benefits. If you go, then we're also going to be using restricted funds in the amount of 10,528. This will be to purchase a drone, and we'll be using fund balance in the amount of 7,000 also for the purchase of that drone. And then if you go down under expenditures, you'll see that that's all funded under budgeted under capital outlay. You may have to. I'll have.
On the last page, is just the fleet fund, the fund 50, so it's those vehicles, the one from Kern and then the two for the military officers. And then the last is the county, and it's just, we received the non-cash donation for paint, and that just the entry for that. I think that was solid county funds.
Are there any questions? Okay. If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Approve the quarterly budget amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Point of order, I think that
We have to have a
public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing regarding our budget, our quarterly budget adjustments.
Chairman, look back, I will move, we move into a public hearing regarding the proposed budget amendments.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Harmony, I believe we need to take a roll call vote.
Director Bradley.
Aye.
Director Brands.
Aye.
Director Cardenas.
Aye.
Director Dali.
Aye.
Director Keegley.
Aye.
Director Litthouse.
Aye.
Director Olson,
Aye.
Director Peterson,
Aye.
Director Prokopis,
Aye.
Director Silvestrini,
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
Thank you. We are in the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to comment? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now we'll move into board discussion. Thank you, Mayor Silvestrini, for straightening me up. We'll go into any board discussion to the quarterly adjustment. If none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Do we need a roll call vote on this as well? We do, believe. Thank you, Harmony.
Director Bradley.
Aye.
Director Brems. Director Cardenas.
Aye.
Director Daly.
Aye.
Director Keighley.
Aye.
Director Litvak.
Aye.
Director Olson.
Aye.
Director Peterson.
Aye.
Director Prokopis.
Aye.
Director Silvestrini.
Aye.
Director Stevenson.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you. Debbie, it's really nice to meet you and welcome to the team.
Nice meeting you and thank you. And as you can see, I really enjoy the holidays. My closet is, I have the things hanging by month according to the holiday. So I just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the team. We're thrilled to have you. I'm glad you made it safely this morning. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7. Harry, I believe you're presenting.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I wanted to discuss the resolution of opposition to the proposed amendment Representative Tusher's bill to essentially remove the sheriff legislatively as the chief executive officer of the UPD. In the discussion, the concern was related to it might be premature and the fact that there has been this is a local control issue that should be decided at the local level. I did not get into other issues relating to that because I think that was the will of the board expressed simply that they don't want this decided at the state level. So that's why the resolution was drafted that way. There could be impacts that haven't been studied or maybe significant on the members, but that simply there was also a feeling that this may be rushing the issue where maybe more time would be appropriate to analyze it. So with that in mind, that's why the resolution was drafted the way it is. At this point, I think that it would be appropriate for discussion, maybe amendment to it. If there's something in there that the board doesn't like, we can change it, but that to express the intent of the board that this is something that they would prefer not be decided at this time at the state level.
Thank you for that introduction. I will open the floor for comments or questions or potential edits to this resolution. Mayor Silvestrini.
Thank you. So I'm generally supportive of this resolution or something close to it. You know, there are a number of factors here that I'm kind of like concerned about, I guess. You know, first of all, I think that what we say needs to be carefully worded because my sense is that this bill has support and you know, it could, something like this could pass even if we oppose it, right? And I want to be in the best position. I want this organization to be in the best position to both be able to lobby the legislature on this and also to you know, plan for the future, whatever that is, right? I think, at least it's my opinion, and I think this is probably shared by a lot of board members, that you know the most important thing for us is to make sure that Unified Police Department survives as a viable entity. And actually, the best thing for law enforcement in this valley would be if we were to move to a more holistic model where we had, a regional law enforcement agency so that UPD actually expanded. Because I think law enforcement services are delivered more efficiently and also more effectively when there's regional policing. You might see in other metropolitan areas like Los Angeles or Denver or places like that where you don't have, umpteen police departments trying to coordinate with each other to catch bad guys. So the question is, what's the best way to do that? And I do recognize from the discussion that's gone on in that committee that I've been, chairing and furthermore, and having separate discussions with police chiefs and city managers and mayors of other non-UPD cities, there is a real concern by them that there isn't transparency when the sheriff is the CEO of UPD and when there are, when the budgets are intermingled or there are things that are shared. And it's really difficult to easily explain things like that to people, to allay their fears that there isn't a subsidy to this department by the county that's inappropriate in any way, right? And that while the methodology may be, you could think of a different way to do it, tell us what that might be. It's the best methodology that we've come up with so far to try to be fair and transparent. So I have some reservations about this in terms of it hardening our position or not enabling us to negotiate our way through this. But the things that I would like to see added to this, because I think the main reason to preserve the sheriff as the CEO of UPD and the county's involvement in having and funding, countywide services through UPD is because of the efficiencies that are achieved that way. It's cheaper to do it that way, I believe. I'm convinced of that, and it's also more effective to do it that way. For the provision of law enforcement in our valley. So I would actually like to see an addition to this and I haven't wordsmithed this, but something to the effect that what I've written down is another paragraph that would say, whereas performance by the Unified Police Department of certain of the sheriff's statutory duties under the sheriff's direction and control delivers efficiency and economies of scale, which would not be realized with the sheriff to be removed as CEO of UPD. And then another paragraph, this is a kind of a separate issue, and I appreciate the idea that that our first, I don't want to say line of defense, but maybe that's appropriate. Our first line of defense is to say, no, please, this is a local issue. Don't, leave that decision up to the UPD board in Salt Lake County. It's not a state issue that the state needs to become involved in. That's what this says. But were we to not win on that line of defense, okay? I am very concerned about the way the present draft legislation is worded for two reasons that are not addressed in this resolution. And I understand why we might not want to say anything now because we don't want to be unduly defensive and or concede something, right? But I think if we don't raise this now and something like this bill gets passed, we'll be in a far worse position than if we raise it now. And those two things that I have concerns about are this. One, were the sheriff to be removed by statute as the CEO of this department, we need time, okay, to plan for how to separate the Siamese twins, okay? And to have a bill going into effect that required us to act by the next fiscal year would be a total disaster, train wreck, right? And I am concerned that law enforcement in this valley and among the county and the cities and in this department would suffer drastically if we don't have time to plan that. So I think it merits, even though we don't want to concede anything, it merits saying, golly gee, if you're really going to do this, please consider that it allows please allow time for this to happen. And I don't know how that possibly could happen before sometime in 2024 or something like that. I don't know. Both this department and the county would have to react and reshuffle their budget. So I actually think we should address that, and I haven't drafted anything for that. Then the other thing that I'll say that's in this bill that in the draft legislation that I think we should address, even though we hope it doesn't pass, is, and I don't have it in front of me, but there is language in there that talks about restricting the sheriff's ability to not only be the CEO of the UPD, but also that the sheriff or anybody working under her control basically can't interact with an interlocal police agency. I'm not sure exactly what the wording on that is, but that is a train wreck waiting to happen with respect to if this were to pass, the sheriff's department will have to interact with interlocal law enforcement agencies and other police agencies in order to ensure the kind of coordination and efficient delivery of law enforcement services to our county. And that language is problematic and it probably should be stricken. And I recommend that we address those things now, just because if I don't know when this board is going to get a chance to address this again before the session. And, you know, once the session gets rolling, things happen. And I'd rather have something on paper that we can use to warn people about the consequences of pulling the trigger on this.
Jeff, can I probe a little bit on that too? And as it relates to that issue and that issue outside of counties of first class, like, isn't it common in counties that are other than counties of the first class that the sheriff commonly works with agencies
It is
on a regular basis? So
every day.
it just seems to me like they're targeting counties of the first class, which is Salt Lake County.
They're targeting UPD, okay?
And
it's clear.
So, but you've also got this issue coming up where Utah County is rapidly approaching being a county of the first class, and I believe Davis County maybe as well. And so that's going to be an issue if they target, if they target legislations to counties of the first class. They're basically restricting the duly elected sheriff's ability to do, in this case, her job. And so that's, seems problematic to me. Why are they saying, well, never mind, you answered the question. It's specifically targeted at this connection between UPD and the sheriff, in this case, in the county of the first class. But, my issue with it is, as I expressed in the last board meeting, that we have a duly elected sheriff that has responsibilities in this county, and we have a 9-person county board that deals with the finances. And if there's intermingling, or if there's a sense that there's not fairness in the way those duties are spread around, the county council can deal with that with the sheriff. Why do we need the state to step in and, use a hammer in this case? So I agree with you that we can mold the language a little bit, maybe soften it a little bit to put our point across, but I'd also like to see some language in here. I don't know if it's strong enough to say we also have a county council, an elected county council that already has these tools in terms of fixing this issue at the county level if there's an issue to be fixed.
If I could address that very comment, I didn't want to try to speak for Salt Lake County on this. I had to be very careful specifically not to, just because I think they need to speak for themselves on their position on this piece of legislation. I did mention that in there that this is something that may require further study and more time to review, so raise that issue. But I agree that I can add these 2 provisions and perhaps even present it after our audit as a revision to submit to the board with these, if that's the desire of the board. Because I think they are significant issues. I didn't want to get ahead of the board and put all the reasons why I think the legislation maybe isn't a good idea and is particularly being rushed this year, if that's what they want to do. But the discussion was simply mostly about local control and let us deal with our whatever issues there are. But I think that these raise two very important issues. One is most legislation goes into effect in May after the legislative session ends. And the standard is, I think, 60 days. So it's problematic to think that in this fiscal year, we could be looking at a separation of our relationship with the county if it's forced on us, and how that would impact us and how it would impact the county. And so I think that putting, something about, sometimes you don't want to concede anything, but on the other end, it would be disastrous to have this forced on us without time to deal with it. And I really think that time period, maybe 2 years, just to make sure that things are dealt with in a way, if it does pass, that we have a plan. Would be one example of one of the effects is that if the county is no longer in the UPD, we no longer have access to this lease. So we would need to find a new location for UPD for property and evidence for our special operations area. And we would need time to divide out what property and evidence is Salt Lake County's, because it was there before the UPD. How do we structure the division in terms of what responsibilities we have on a countywide basis would go back to the county versus would stay with UPD? So there are a ton of unanswered questions right now in the legislation. And one of the things I think that's concerning is I heard the sponsor say, well, the only change would be that you would adjust your budget for the sheriff and undersheriff's salary, and that's clearly not accurate. So I think that the more time we have, if there's something to this effect may pass, the better it would be. Because I just don't think the consequences have been studied by the county, by the UPD, and by the state in terms of this going forward. And particularly if it has the standard 60 days after it's passed, it goes into effect, it's almost impossible to comply. So I think that
but could be, sorry to interrupt you, but the other thing here is that this would go into effect in an awkward time where neither the county nor the municipalities and townships that comprise UPD have this on their budget radar, right? This would require some significant budget adjustments for all the entities involved.
So I think that I will actually, if you could email me some of what you wrote down, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I can do that.
If that's the sense of the board that we want to add some additional language to this in that area, I'd be happy to and resubmit it next week when we meet on the accepting the audit. And I know we said it was a one-item agenda, it might be a two, but I think it's important we get this right. And Mayor Stream is absolutely correct. Once the legislative session starts, this could come up at any point for approval. And I think that I would like to have something to the legislature before the first day, because I used to work with the legislature when I was with the state, and I never understood, in spite of years being up there, the timing of anything. It could be the last day, it could be the first day, it could be any time in between. There won't be a lot of notice to us, so I'd like to have this on board. And I would just make the request that the county consider something like this as well, but I don't want to speak for them.
The other thing I would say on this too, this is just more, I guess, being more what I would characterize as being more lawyer-like and a professional, I guess. I would revise this so that rather than saying whereas Representative Tusher has sponsored a bill, I would not make it personal. I would just say whereas a bill has been sponsored, something like that. That's just
I couldn't find a number on the bill yet.
No, there isn't a bill.
There isn't one.
I don't think it's
But
been numbered.
I agree with you that keep the personal
Yeah.
names out of that.
And I just couldn't find a number and didn't know how else to reference
Yeah,
it.
I think we would just say, Bill, I mean, everybody's gonna know that, but without, rather than calling that out, and it's just that, that's just something when, if I was writing, I wouldn't, I'd be at comment like.
I will clean that up.
When does the legislature start?
The day after Martin Luther King Day, which I think is the 16th or the 17th.
I think it's 16, actually.
Of January.
Right.
Yeah, well, we probably, what will be the process to review and approve?
So the committee, this was forwarded by the committee, wasn't it?
No, I don't think they've acted on it.
They didn't vote on it. I'm trying to remember. I was there.
Yeah, so what they
There was a
indicated,
discussion, but it didn't.
the committee did vote to approve it and forward it. They said they would take it up during the legislative session, so
Okay.
it could literally be any time.
So what that means then is that the process is going to be the legislature starts and then there'll be, the bill would be assigned to a committee and in the House. And then that would have to go through a committee hearing and then be passed by the House. After about, what, 3 votes, and then it goes to the Senate. So
My question was simply, will this body convene before that happens and will we be able to?
likely our January, the meeting would be before this makes it out of the House, I would think. That's gonna be in January.
It has to get voted under rules and assigned.
Yeah.
Do we have our January meeting set, Harmony?
Mayor, the next board meeting is the 19th, so we'll have to.
So that's 3 days after the session. So I suspect we would have another meeting. So we would have time to this. What I think, and I think what would be best is to try to get a redraft of this, to take a look at this next Thursday. And then be able to chew on it some more, if, you know, that would, but at least we'll make a start on it at that meeting. And then actually we can tweak it and finally approve it on the 19th, if that's our meeting. That, I think we'll be okay with that. Like that.
If I may, the other piece of this that I think this board needs to consider taking action on is, again, with what Mayor Silvestrini has said. In order to be best prepared, we have stopped this organizational review. We have 100,000 set aside, and I think that we should take action to support doing an updated study of what would transition restructuring look like and what are the options for this organization to be able to successfully move forward. And I think there's many different options that could exist, but I think that I'm concerned that not enough, where my concern is that this is going to pass is that clearly, I mean, what we see in this work group is that communities inside of Salt Lake County that aren't a part of UPD do not understand the ramifications of this. And I don't think communities outside of Salt Lake County are going to understand the ramifications of this. And so I don't know that there's strong reason for folks to vote no. And with that, I think we really need to be as prepared as possible and start the process of trying to have a study done of what could restructuring reorganization look like for UPD members.
So I don't know if I want to spend that money now on that. I mean, ultimately, if this happens, there's work to be done. But I also think that, and I also think that in terms of being persuasive with the legislature and lobbying this, that one of the things that, and this is a double-edged sword perhaps, because it's so hard to explain this in a way that doesn't make it look like there's really a problem here after all. But to the sheriff, I mean, we're going to have to present arguments about why this would adversely affect law enforcement in Salt Lake County and why it would cost the county more and UPD jurisdictions more if we lose the efficiencies that we have working together, and efficiencies that are completely appropriate and not a double taxation situation that is what we're being accused of essentially. So I know that there's been, you know, that we looked at this through a different lens a couple of years ago where we looked at it from the Salt Lake County side of it. I wonder if even command staff can, because part of lobbying this is going to be ultimately talking to legislators about about the nuts and bolts about why this is a bad idea. So maybe coming up with it that way is a start to what you're talking about. And if we need to have an outside consultant come in, that's one thing, but I'm not sure that we need that right now. I mean, that's my, I don't know, but I just think that, you know, that money that we have set aside for that study, we may figure out a better way to use that. It might be that we use it in terms of how to, you know, separate the Siamese twins is what I'm talking about, but I don't know if I want to pull the trigger on that yet.
I hear you on that, and I guess if we have a timeline in place, 2 years, I would love to get 3 years, but let's say we had 2, then I'm less concerned. But if we're unsuccessful and they really just say, we're just gonna go do this, then I would hate for that trigger to be happening immediately, and we're not even in the process of figuring that out. And so I see what you're saying, I guess that's my concern.
So I've raised that issue with the sponsor of this bill, and I don't think that he's going to be opposed to giving us the time that we need to make sure this is done right, so it doesn't adversely affect law enforcement. I mean, obviously, I can't promise that, but in raising the concerns about that I have about this, we've been talking with him. That's one of the things that we have discussed. So.
So I wanted to just make sure I understand what staff is going to be doing on this, is that if it is to rework a draft for next week, that's one thing. If it's going to be to prepare something for the board meeting on the 19th of January, that's another thing. It would give us a little more time to go back and forth on some of this and circulate some drafts. Is this something you want to be ready to review next week, or would you prefer to tweak some of this going forward where it's set for the January board meeting?
I don't want to ruin your week, okay? But I also think that that getting a start on this and at least having a draft and you know, I think potentially, I don't know if there are open meeting concerns. I think if we individually communicate with you, Harry, about comments that you might have for this, and we don't copy the whole board, that's probably okay from an open meeting standpoint. But so what I would suggest is maybe you talk drafts to us. And then,
I see, by the way, I don't have travel plans during the holidays. I can actually work on this. I'm not going to be, you're not going to be ruining my week. If you'd like to have something back by next week, I think that's doable. We can internally circulate something based upon what's said, and yeah, I'd be happy to communicate with the chair, with you, perhaps with Mayor Stevenson, and try to see if there's a consensus document that addresses the concerns. And if we can at least review it again in our meeting next week that we have, we can maybe fashion it so that by the time it's either ready for next week or it'll be ready for January 19th, with the understanding that we should notify the sponsor and others that the UPD board will be taking a position and ask not to move the bill forward until that's presented to the committee and to the legislature. In the meantime, maybe the county might be looking at this as well and have something as well to submit. But yeah, I'm fine with that, and I think I can get something out by next week. That
so let me just, I'm just going to ask. I mean, is it? Sorry, maybe I'm usurping my role, but I mean, is everybody comfortable with the comments that I had made? And the reason that I asked that is that there is a strategy consideration here about, you know, whether we're perceived as setting up our second line of defense, if you will, you know, rather than just saying, you know, heck no. I don't know.
My only concern would be that we don't want to send a message that says, give us a grace period. And then they come back at the next session and do whatever they want anyway. Say, well, we gave you a grace period. I think we ought to make it clear that it's a bad idea under any circumstance during any time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that I just think because of the dynamics of it. I mean, I respect that there's a decision on that a majority of us have to decide what is the best strategy. I just think that there's a way to say this where you say, this is a bad idea. You should leave this up to the UPD board and the county they can solve it.
It'll be a
But if you decide to go forward with this bad idea, at least do this, you know.
stylistically, I think Harry moved that language.
I certainly can strengthen it. I tried to tone it down. Certainly can strengthen it.
Could I make a comment? This is Carolyn. Could I make a
Of
comment?
course, please.
One of my gut feelings when and I may not know enough about this, especially strategy and all that, but after the last committee meeting, what I was shocked by was that the people that want to separate the sheriff from UPD had comments that they made maybe understand that they really are confused about the UPD model and are confusing shared services, countywide services. They can't see the difference between that, and they're basing their goal, what they want to do, with a lack of information. And so in fact, a comment that Lori Stringham mentioned, she says, we define the two differences between shared services and county services? And it was alarming to me that they're making these decisions that there could be, as you mentioned, a train wreck on that lack of information. So the thing that came to my mind is education, education, education. We've got to find a way of educating the county council, the people that are in this committee. And I don't know how we do that in getting them to change their paradigm of thinking. It's really alarming to me. But I think that we need to, like it was mentioned, that the more timely we can do this before the legislative body, because they get so busy, they won't have time to really grasp the full depth of this, especially if it goes to the state and they make a decision based on hearsay.
Carolyn, I agree with you. I don't mean to be the pessimist in the room. I guess when I look at this work group and doing that most Fridays, sitting down for 2 hours, having department heads come in and take time to present, and it is still not being clear to these individuals. So I don't know how we do that for the legislature. And that's where I worry that those ramifications just are not understood. And I don't know how we realistically make them understood if this work group is not doing that from the amount of work that has already gone into that.
I think we've made progress on a lot of things about what are appropriate countywide services that should be funded by the county's general fund, but we have not been able to make any headway with respect to certain individuals that believe that the sheriff should not be the CEO of UPD.
I just have one more request going back to this. Funding, what is, do we look at reorganization and being prepared for that? Could we, I guess, would this board be comfortable if we at least put an agenda item in the January meeting? I know that this is fast moving, things could change. I don't want to be rash, but making sure that at a minimum, we're having another conversation in January so that we can consider taking action.
Well, yes, I mean, I would support that. And I also think that, we would adopt whatever we come up with in our January board meeting, right? So that we'll be talking about this then.
So the goal would be to vote officially on this resolution on the 19th, at the 19th January meeting, and revisit the idea of looking at the separation with the dollars that were set aside to do the organizational evaluation. So reconsider that. I think that sends the wrong message to the legislature, but that's my 2 cents.
You mean the money or what? Or
Starting to engage on the separation discussion prior to the legislation passing.
I know that it's a tricky situation, and I don't want us to give up more than what we need or just be defeated in this. I just think that it would be irresponsible to not be prepared and have this pass. I mean, it'd be irresponsible for public safety. And so there's other strategies we can do.
The senator to pass it without giving us time to separate amicably. So,
I agree with that.
Yes, can I just make a couple comments? So I think if you prematurely do this, you're sending a message to the officers that you're not going to fight for this department. They are already struggling, concerned about their careers with UPD, wondering what the future is going to be. I think there's a lot that we can do behind the scenes in the sense of what you're talking about, that we can continue to take a look at what the cost would be, what it would look like. But all of that can be done behind the scenes before we actually go to the state legislature, because we need some time to do that anyway. But really, I think if you start talking about you're okay with the separation in a resolution, that it sends a negative message to the officers and also to me, because I need to know whether I have the support or not, because I have to make plans to move everything back as well. So I just think that our officers are so important to this, and not just officers, our civilian staff too. We've lost a couple because they don't know what the future will be here. And that's the last thing that we want. But I think if they feel like you are supportive of keeping this together the way it is, we know there's going to be a challenge, and we'll address the challenges as we go, but we need some time to figure out how much this is going to cost everyone as well. And we just have not had enough time to do that. It will take time. I would ask that maybe the funding that Mayor Stevenson's talking about, that if we get to a point where we may need some help in hiring somebody to help us figure out how, what it looks like, that maybe we bring that to this board, and there will be the extra funding to do that. But right now, we don't need that yet, because we're just starting to get a good look at it. We did it in 2019, but it was more for shared services. We did not look at the whole agency. So, and that's what we need to do, is review what the costs would be, and also find out if county council's on board as well.
Yeah, the county council process is, they'll take positions on bills, but bills have to be an actual bill with language, usually, for our council to take a position.
Well, I think I would be in favor of what was originally recommended, which is, and I didn't see, I don't know if I heard that we needed to strengthen the language of this as much as we needed to boil it down a little bit in terms of what our and soften it. Is that what you were saying?
I'm not saying, I'm okay with most everything that's in here. I just wanted to add some things to it that specifically talked about kind of the why we're opposed to this.
I would be in favor of trying to do that as you propose next week, and at least see if we could come to a consensus on what this was. But I also agree that we shouldn't be communicating in our message that we're conceding.
Great.
And then see what happens, come January when the legislative session starts. And then we'll approve the final on the 19th of January, right? But I don't see why we couldn't at least come up with something that we think is really close between now and next Thursday. I don't think we need to wait.
Yeah, I mean, so this, if we get to the point where where we are comfortable with it by next Thursday, there's no reason we couldn't, right? We should have on the agenda consideration of
We will
this.
have it on the agenda.
So,
With the burden of this legislation, fall to the legislators to show us why and how it impacts our funds differently in the city. I'm sure it would.
no,
I would wish, say, look, here's your goals, what your costs.
unfortunately, no.
The legislature is free to consider and use whatever analysis they would like to make a decision. I think that it's on us to try to enlighten them as much as possible on whatever legislation affects us.
And one other thing is, the Kearns Metro Township fully supports the UPD model and the sheriff.
I'm gonna say one last thing on this. That's all I'll have to say. Because I fully agree with the sheriff, and I'm really concerned about our officers having this uncertain future. And I guess what worries me is how I view it right now is that we are in the most uncertain right now. Because to me, if it is, and this is where I think that with this language, I support in here saying this should be a local control. I'm not trying to concede, but to me, if I was an officer and I'm not, so my perspective may not be the same. If this failed or it doesn't go anywhere, then we know we operate as we are. But if it does, in order to give our officers the most certain future, that means that we have to be prepared for what that means. And I think that right now, knowing it either fails and we're fine, or it passes, and then who knows, that to me is what is most uncertain, and where, again, if I was an officer, that would probably scare me the most. And regardless, making sure that we are prepared for whatever the future holds. And I think there's different ways to go about that. It doesn't mean we have to go spend to do a study of reorganization. I think that there's things that can be happening behind the scenes. I'm totally open to that. I just think that this board needs to be.
Well, I mean, just, in drafting something that tries to meld all this together, it's not going to be easy. We'll be going through a few drafts, but I would say this, I think this organization right now works spectacularly well. And I think that, and I don't, maybe that's a strong word, but it works. And I think that we're all proud of what our officers do, the resources they can fall back on if they need to because of the way we're structured. And I think that's a message the legislature does need to hear, and the proponents of this bill do need to hear, because in reality, that's what matters the most. But we can, and in terms of maybe putting something like that in there, I think it's good. It doesn't mean that there aren't ways to perhaps structure county-wide spending in a way that might involve more other entities or something like that. But I think that balkanizing law enforcement any more in the valley than it already is, and I think you brought that up, Mayor's point, isn't the way to go in the future. So it seems to me that our model is what works, and maybe others need to look at something like it and expanding it. But to balkanize the UPD now, when in fact a metro type of a structure might be better for what we're doing in the valley, is something that's sending the wrong message too. And I didn't know if we want to address that now or address.
Well, Harry, I mean, actually adding something like that in here probably makes sense. And actually, in terms of how we approach lobbying this bill, I mean, one of the messages that we should be conveying is that the communities that are members of the UPD support the UPD model and support the concept of regional law enforcement in the Salt Lake Valley as being more efficient and more effective than numerous independent agencies that don't necessarily communicate with each other, or I know that they work in collaboration to the extent they can, but given how they're structured, it's very difficult for them to coordinate in the same page. They have different policies, they have different procedures. When they arrive at the scene where they need to coordinate, we had an episode of that in West Valley within the last month where that was a problem, okay, because they weren't on the same page about that. And there are constant situations where their agencies are struggling about who's in command here and how is the incident going to be managed. And that's not good for the public. So making our point on this and maybe being less defensive about this and more proactive, that UPD is a model that promotes regional law enforcement, and we support that model. And maybe we need a paragraph in here that says that.
Okay. All right. I don't know if I need further direction at this point. I think we can work on something and have it looked at next week.
So we will entertain a new draft of this based on some of the conversation that happened today at next Thursday's meeting. I think we can put an opportunity for approval on that one, but we can always defer it to January if necessary.
Do we need a motion to table or?
No, I mean, I think that it would be appropriate to motion to continue consideration of this matter to the meeting.
I'll make a motion that we for consideration of this resolution to our next scheduled meeting, which is December 22nd at 9 a.m. And that, and we give direction to staff to redraft the resolution consistent with our discussions today.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Harry.
Thank you. And Merry Christmas to everyone. Oh, well, we'll see you before Christmas anyway.
Happy
Premature
holidays.
wedding.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on to our next agenda item, number 8. I'll entertain a motion for approval of our November 17th minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, last agenda item, upcoming meetings. As you all know, we just scheduled a follow-up meeting for next Thursday at 9 a.m. on December 22nd. We will see you all next week. And is there any other business from the board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And so Lisa will start very shortly, so.
I motion to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Without objection, so adjourned. Thank you.